Hey, Don here. Welcome to Podiatry Practice Mastery. Um, as you know, I'm trying to get you all to the $1 million practice mark per year for your individual production in your practice. So that's what my aim is here with Podiatry Practice Mastery. And today I want to go over, I always like to go over the good stuff, but today I'm going to go over some of the bad stuff. What are my biggest mistakes for 2023? These kind of were in my own private practice. They weren't huge, but if I'm struggling with them, you might all have these other things as well. So the first thing, it was kind of an embarrassing thing I'm going to share. There was, I was called, actually my office manager came to my office a couple weeks ago and they said, Don, I have to tell you something. And she said that you've been making some of the staff uncomfortable. And I was thinking to myself, what did I do? Like, what do I do that makes people uncomfortable? Um, and she said, "Well, you're touching them on the shoulder." So let me explain a little bit about this. I tend to say hi to all the staff every morning, and I think there's one particular staff that her back is always to me, and so I say good morning, I touch her on the shoulder, say good morning. That's just the way I am, and I think it's mostly because of the whole Brazilian culture. Because in the Brazilian culture, they hug, they touch, they do all these things, and there's no bad connotation. But what I have to realize sometimes is that probably it's not that way with the patient, with the other staff. And so I was called out on that, and it was really embarrassing. I felt bad. That was not my intention. Never was my intention to make any of the staff feel uncomfortable. But I was glad they brought it to my attention. And so this is one part where it's nice to have an office manager that is able to bring these things to my attention. She brought that to my attention, multiple times throughout the year. There were patients that were dissatisfied. I had another patient that sent a message and was dissatisfied with the way I treated them. And a lot of times what happens to me is I enjoy treating. I enjoy being with patients. I enjoy joking around with patients. And sometimes by not being as professional, that can kind of bite me in the butt. And this was a patient that I made a little remark about a sweater that they were wearing that was higher up around their neck and from because it looked like something back in the 80s. And they were taken back by that. And so this is a learning experience for me. I have to kind of not be as, I guess, fun and enjoyable all the time, but still kind of be myself. I don't know if that's happened to you guys. If it has, please let me know. So I think the first mistake for me is, being too, I don't know what it is, nice maybe, but and maybe it might just be the distinction between me and my colleagues, but I think they're that way as well. So, but it's a learning experience. I always find with these experiences, what I do is I write them out. I've talked about this before, but I do something called an experience transformer. And this is always really to help me out. So first of all, I share them. We're going to get a little therapeutic here, but when something bad happens, I like to first of all share that, and because it's called there's a good book by Brene Brown called "The Gifts of Imperfection." If you haven't read it, it's a good book, and she talks about sharing your shame storm. And when you share it, it almost diffuses it, makes it smaller, makes it more easy to deal with. So I share that not with everyone, but she talks about with a empathetic witness or just someone that you trust. Basically, I'll share it with my wife. I'll share it with one of their colleagues at work. And by sharing that, it really diffuses the situation and it reduces the size of it. But if I keep it to myself, or if I just keep thinking about it, or like it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. So this is a lot of different aspects of my life, but I like to share this with others that I trust, and it just makes it a better perspective. So you need to have someone you can share these things with. That's why part of it, almost like this podcast, is therapeutic in one sense. So I can share it with all of you that are listening. So that was the first one, was touching people or being inappropriate according to what patients thought. It's not what I think, it's what they think. And that's what really matters. Number two is my biggest mistake is being distracted. I don't know about you, but I tend to go a little bit after the bright, shiny objects, always trying something new, specifically with Podiatry Practice Mastery. It's something that I enjoy. But if you think about it, right now, all of my revenue comes from my practice, like trying to keep into the $1 million mark of what my production is where all my revenue comes. Now, in the future, Practice Mastery might supplant some of that, but I kind of do it because I enjoy it. But I find many times that distracts me. And so during the day, I get distracted from patients. I'm kind of working on another side project. I'm recording a podcast. I'm working on some marketing for the practice. And I find that that distraction isn't really good for me. And I think the joke is, now that I have a scribe, I'm a little bit more distracted now because I have more time to work on all these little pet projects. And one thing I've learned within Strategic Coach that I go to is that it's best to have time that's called free time, focus time, and buffer time. And this is a technique that I learned there. But free days are like days where you're not doing any business. And what happens for a lot of us is when we don't have enough time, our free time kind of becomes business time, or a time where we can work on our ideas. Okay. The second thing is focus days. Focus time is like time where you're producing revenue, that you're doing revenue producing activities. And that's where I'm seeing patients. That's for all of us. When we're seeing patients, that's what we're producing. And there's buffer time. Buffer time is when we're working on other little side projects. For me, that might be recording YouTube videos, recording podcasts, doing this other type of buffer activity. It's not really revenue producing activity at that time, but it will produce revenue in the future. And the challenge is when you mix all these together, it becomes like a salad, a fruit salad, like all different types of things. What worked for me in the past best is that I had one day or a half day to do all my buffer things, like all my recording of videos and things like that. If you don't have that time, then you're trying to fit it into the page edges or the in-between time with patients. And that was always a kind of a struggle for me of getting distracted. One thing that's helped me to not get as distracted is I use something called a treatment tracker. And all this is at the end of each month, I get a report, okay, and this report kind of shares where all of my revenue comes from. All my revenue comes from, okay, and so normally it's 20% of my activities bring in 80%. There's an 80-20 rule, so 20% of my activities bring in 80% of my revenue. And so I get that report. I look at those like 20% of activities and I put them on a Word document. And basically I have, let's say, number 1 to 25. And then I have the what are the main categories. So for me, number 1 is office visits, right? So office visits, new and established. Number 2 would be orthotics. Number 3 would different types of procedures. Number 4 would be like imaging. Number 5 would be like DME stuff. Number 6 would be EPAT. And so I put these into a treatment tracker. So what I'll do is underneath this audio, I'm going to put a link to that Google Sheet if you want to see the current one that I'm using, because I'm always messing with it and making it better and things like that. But what I do is I just put an X on what number patient I'm on and what kind of, if I've done. I don't specifically always write out what procedure it was or what x-rays or ultrasound I did. It's just kind of tracking and keeping my focus on production, right? Because those are the things that'll bring me to the $1 million practice. There are these things. There's only a few things, and I consistently do them over and over and over again. And if I get distracted, I get bored or just thinking about other things or forgetting to offer things. That's where this treatment tracker has helped me, along with my treatment sheets. The other thing that really helps me are these treatment sheets. These are sheets that I have for each diagnosis, and I print out and I fill out. I have the ones that go in my little prescription thing in my pocket, but what I'm using now is these full page ones. I'll also put a link to those if you want to see my treatment sheets. There's a generic one. You can fill it out as how you treat, but when you can do this, put your add your own logo to it and print it out based on your diagnosis, and then you just fill that out and give it to the patient. So that is the number 2 error, is to not get distracted. So what helps me not get distracted are the treatment sheets, my presentations, and this treatment tracker. And then the last thing that my other mistake was, in my opinion, is I don't like to worry. I don't like to be worried about things. And that really kind of drains me because of the uncertainty of the situation. And so there was a few times during this year where there were certain surgeries that I did that kind of, I lost sleep over. I don't know if you do this, but I lose sleep over surgery. Everything at the end, as I'm looking like at the end of the year, kind of going back, everything did work out well. But that's something that I don't like, is worrying about that. What I've done to kind of mitigate that is I've actually written a list of all the surgeries that I feel comfortable doing, and I have that in a Word document. And so my scribe knows, so they have access to scheduling those surgeries. But there's not many surgeries that I feel comfortable or I just love doing. I tend to like the non-surgical treatments. I think they work a lot better. So kind of the third mistake of this year was getting distracted with surgeries maybe that have a worrisome outcome about them. Okay. I'll give you just one example. There's a patient that tried everything. They tried everything for plantar fasciitis. Did like 6 sessions of EPAT, had the Aero spring brace. I think we did a couple of rounds of cortisone on the patient. And then I ended up doing a plantar fasciotomy on him, and he ended up doing okay. But when I went in there, it's like there was no plantar fascia. And I was like, oh boy, like what's going on here? And I think maybe the plantar fascia was blown out with maybe one of the cortisone injections or something. But and then I was worried I bagged the nerve. That was the other thing I was concerned with as I was in there, because he had a lot of nerve pain. And so I was giving him Neurontin after the surgery. It ended up being okay. But it's like those things really stress me out. And and I always think of, well, what could I have done? I probably could have got an MRI versus just an ultrasound to make sure everything was okay prior to the surgery. But like those things give me stress. And so those are kind of the three things. Would be, one would be being careful how we treat staff and the patients, to always be, I guess, professional, but nice and fun, I guess. Try not to get distracted and use things to keep yourself being distracted. And then in terms of the surgery, I find the best thing for me is to do that. My surgery list. Okay. I'm going to put a couple of resources under this podcast. If you guys found this enjoyable, let me know. Don at podiatrypracticemastery.com. I have a lot of resources there. The newest resource, which was always something new, is called my patient or my practice audit. That's something I encourage you to do. So what it is, it's something I put on Google Forms. It's a long form. It's a long process. It'll send you a copy at the end. And then it'll really go into depth of how you can improve your practice. And I put on there, like, what are the things that help me get to the $1 million practice? These like actual activities. And then if you want to fill it out, I'll get a copy. You'll get a copy. And then if you want to, you can meet some time to meet with me and we can chat about it. But if you just want to, I think just doing it yourself will help you kind of see, hey, what are things I can improve on? So that's on Podiatry Practice Mastery. All the way on the bottom is called the Practice Audit. Okay. Once again, thanks. Hope you found this beneficial. Let me know if you have any other thoughts. Bye.